Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Welcome. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. If you guys remember, yesterday evening, I taught you the fetter of central desire, and the plan was to also teach you the fetter of ill will, but we didn't have time for that, so I postponed it until today. So while normally we start with meditation and then I teach you, what I'm going to be doing is teaching you the fetter of ill will. Then I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation because that's part of the remedy for that. And then we're going to actually do that meditation together. So there's going to be some teaching this morning before we actually start meditating. So welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. Just as a little bit of a refresher from yesterday, what central desire is where the mind is longing, yearning. It's chasing after the objects of its affection. It's longing through the six sense bases. The six sense bases are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. The mind is wanting permanently agreeable contact through the sense bases. So it's seeking fulfillment externally. That's what the mind does in the unenlightened state, is it forms its feelings based on external circumstances. It's actually craving, desire, attachment inside the mind that we refer to as craving, desire, attachment in a general way, but really at the heart of that is the fetter of central desire, where the mind is longing through the eyes for agreeable contact. And if it has agreeable contact through any of these six sense bases, it will experience pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But if you experience disagreeable contact through your sense bases, that's where you'll experience the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And then the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So when that central desire is being fulfilled, it's like, wow, this is great. I'm getting what I want and what I expect. But then when the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, that's where the painful feelings come in. And one of the things that can happen is ill will can arise. So that's what we're going to be talking about, because central desire and ill will go together. So let me just switch over. Let me just switch over to some visual aids here. And now let us get to the point where we have ill will. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is explaining to you what this fetter is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. Remember, what a fetter is it's a pollution of the mind. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to uproot them and eliminate them out of the mind. And then as you're doing that, that's where you're experiencing more and more of the qualities of enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You'll notice you have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming, that they're at ease, that you have harmony in all your relationships. You'll get to a point where you don't even experience a bad mood any longer. But as long as these pollutions are in the mind, you'll be hindered from that. So this ill will is hindering the mind from being able to experience the peace and the joy of the enlightened mental state. So understanding what it is, understanding the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and knowing how to know that you've actually eliminated is helpful for you, because this is what's going to allow you to apply the techniques that the Buddha taught in order to uproot this out of the mind. So what ill will is the hostility, the hatred, the anger, the aggression, the resentment, frustration, and irritation. Oftentimes people think that this is coming from other people when you experience this, but it's actually coming from your own mind. It's because the mind's central desire isn't getting fulfilled. And because the mind isn't getting what it wants and what it expects, this ill will arises, this anger and bitterness and hostility. And oftentimes what the mind does is it tries to push away the person or the situation that it perceives to be the cause of its discontent feelings. The true cause of the anger and frustration and all these feelings is the mind's central desire. It's the craving, desire, attachment. It's not the outside world. It's not your mom and dad or brothers and sisters or the news or politicians that are causing you to be angry or frustrated. It's the mind itself that's causing it because of its central desire. But because of the mind's lack of wisdom in the unenlightened state, it doesn't understand that, and it perceives the problem to be external. So when it perceives the problem to be external, not realizing that it's its own central desire, its own craving that's causing this anger, it will tend to push away a person or situation. This is called aversion. You might have pushed away friends or family out of your life, thinking that that was the source of your problems. But you can see that didn't solve the problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get irritated. If this person or this situation was the true cause of your anger and frustration when you push them out of your life, then you would be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. Or the second thing someone will do when they don't realize that it's central desire that's causing these discontent feelings and this anger is arising, they'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through their intentions, their speech, and their actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another being, trying to fear it into doing things your way, because the mind's trying to get its central desires fulfilled. Or the third thing you'll tend to do is put expectations on people, try to pressure them to do things your way. And people are probably doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting expectations on you. And this is all coming from the mind's lack of wisdom ultimately, but the real source of it is this central desire, which then arises this ill will, where these painful feelings are arising and the mind is thinking that it's something external, but in reality it's from the mind itself. So this is what ill will is. The symptoms of this is that an individual is going to experience discontent feelings. If you have anger, if you have hatred, if you have bitterness, resentment, hostility in the mind, this is coming from the mind's ill will. It ultimately is going back to central desire and ultimately back to the unknowing of true reality, or what's oftentimes referred to as ignorance. This is the mind experiencing the difficulties and struggles of having not understood that it's its own mind that's causing these feelings. We will firmly believe in the unenlightened state that the problem is external. And that's why the individual just stays stuck in this continuous cycle, because of the lack of wisdom. It continues to think the problem is external. And people kind of relegate themselves to experiencing these feelings over and over and over again. They just think it's normal to experience anger and frustration and sadness and all these other discontent feelings. But that's because the mind has a lack of wisdom. So when you cultivate wisdom, then you can understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and now you can apply a real solution and actually fix it. So these painful feelings are part of the symptoms. You're going to notice that there's hostility, aggression, bitterness, there's arguments, there's broken relationships, there's a lack of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. Because when you have this anger and frustration that's circulating in the mind, it'll lack concentration and focus, that your mind will be hindered from those types of qualities. The Buddha refers to this as a muddled mind. There can be exhaustion and tiredness, because it's really exhausting to be angry. It takes a lot of energy to be angry. You can have difficulty sleeping, headaches, chest pains. There can be other health-related issues as the strain of the anger and hostility is put on the body, the heart, the lungs, the other functions of the body. You can have a shortened lifespan. There can be this inner dialogue within the mind where you're degrading and diminishing yourself, and you're walking around with that, because not only will that ill will come out towards others, but your ill will come out towards yourself too, that you'll direct that towards this being who you are. Now you're walking around with that negative self-talk inside the mind. So these are symptoms of having ill will. And then there's aversion to people and situations. This is where the mind's pushing away. That's what aversion is, where the mind perceives the problem as something external, and it thinks the way to solve it is to push away a situation or to push away the person. These are the symptoms of the ill will. Do you guys have any questions on what ill will is and what the symptoms of it are? No questions? Okay, let me check online here. See if we have any questions here. I don't see anything online. Okay, so now I'll talk about the solution here. The solution is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete perfect plan that's going to eliminate all the craving, desire, attachment from the mind, the longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. That's the ultimate solution. That's what's going to help you to be able to restrain the mind and be able to not experience those discontent feelings. So that eliminates all the source, which is the craving, desire, attachment. So you need to know each one of those factors of the Eightfold Path, dialing it into your life closer and closer and closer. And as part of that, there's meditation that you need to learn, but there's other parts of the Eightfold Path too. There's this loving kindness meditation, which is different than what I've been doing so far in this retreat, where loving kindness meditation is rewiring your mind to be loving and kind. I'm going to teach that to you here in a moment, that when you practice this meditation, it's kind of like filling up your gas tank with loving kindness. And then you go out into the world where you can, through your intention, speech, and actions, be loving and kind. What loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. It's active goodwill towards others without judgment, where you're not judging other people to determine if they deserve your loving kindness or not. You're just choosing to practice unconditional love, meaning you have a genuine interest in seeing this person be well. You don't want anything from them. You don't expect anything from them. You just love them as they are. This is unconditional love. So there's a meditation that helps you to be able to cultivate that in the mind. But then where the real transformation is occurring is when you go out into the world and you're loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. So that's where the Eightfold Path, the full part of the Eightfold Path, comes into play. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to the end of anger. Meditation is important, but you need to go out into the world and practice through your decision making to be loving and kind. Oftentimes when people are struggling in relationships and they're having difficulties, they think the way to solve it is to change the other person, that you might focus attention on trying to change mom and dad or brothers and sisters or your life partner. But you'll never get to peace and joy this way. Your relationships won't improve this way because it's your own mind that's causing the anger and the frustration. In order to be able to get to improve relationships, you need to do this inner work within your own mind. The meditation is helping you to do that, and then applying the teachings in day-to-day life through your intention, speech, and actions. When you start interacting with people in a more loving and kind way, that's what's going to transform your relationships. So we'll talk about this more as we get going today. So it's your intention, speech, and actions through the Eightfold Path and wise decision-making that's really going to transform all of that. Then in the moment when you see the anger and the frustration and the hostility and bitterness arising, you're going to need to restrain the mind. That's where the mindfulness comes in. What mindfulness is awareness of mind, where you're watching over the mind. And then whenever you see that bitterness or hostility or anger arising, you apply right effort to be able to cut that off and let that go, restraining the mind. So if you're checking in at a airport thinking that your airplane's leaving in about an hour, and they tell you, oh, your plane's not leaving for 3 hours, you can't check in yet, and you notice the anger coming up, you need to notice that with your mindfulness, preferably as a bodily sensation. It's going to start as a bodily sensation where there's tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the early warning system alerting you that you're about to experience some anger or frustration. And at that point, you would like to cut that off and let it go. You're not suppressing these feelings or repressing them. You're actually cutting them off and letting them go before they even become a feeling. It's just a bodily sensation at that point. If you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. That's the next part. And if you missed it, then you notice it as a feeling. Okay, cut it off there. And if you don't miss it, or if you don't cut it off there and you miss it, it's going to then affect the condition of your mind. This is where maybe for like a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, you're grumpy and irritable. That's why you would like to cut it off as soon as possible, because once it comes into the mind, it's a lot more challenging to get it out. But if you don't notice it until the condition of the mind, you need to cut it off there. And what you're doing here is you're building awareness of this mental object of ill will so that you could spot it as it's arising and you don't allow it to actually arise, that you restrain your mind from this. Over time, this is going to uproot it out of your mind. It's like a wild bush that you got to cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and eventually uproot it out of the mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible for you to experience anger. Even if you tried to make yourself angry, you wouldn't be able to do it. You won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. Right now, there's probably certain people that you like and certain people that you dislike. And you might think that dislike is coming from the other people, but it's actually coming from your own mind. It's coming from the central desire. It's coming from the longing, yearning, the craving, that the mind's craving permanence. It wants everybody to be this way. And if everybody's this way, then you like them. But if they don't meet those criteria, then you dislike them. And that dislike is coming from the mind. It's seeing this person as disagreeable to you because the mind is craving this permanence, wanting everybody to be one particular way. And then when they're not that way, you'll dislike them. So when you get to the point where you fully trained your mind, you won't have that any longer. So getting rid of this ill will is part of that. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is essentially put a blockade at the bodily sensations where you're cutting off and letting go anytime there's this arising of conditioned feelings. But all the while, you kind of need to take a jackhammer to your ill will, and you need to break that up and get that out of the mind. And that's what loving kindness meditation is doing. That's what's practicing through your intention, speech, and actions in your day-to-day life. That's what that's doing. And then that's what's restraining your mind is doing, is it's breaking up that ill will out of the mind and getting to a point where you don't experience that any longer. As you're implementing these solutions, you'll know that you've actually eliminated the ill will, because you'll no longer experience the arising of conditioned feelings like anger, frustration, irritation, agitation, annoyance, or even the slightest dislike for a minimum of 1 year. For a minimum of 1 year, you'll see that there's no situation where you experience even the slightest little bit of anger or dislike towards others, that it'll be completely eradicated from the mind. And it'll be impossible for your mind to experience that by the time you fully uproot this ill will out of the mind. It'll be impossible for you to experience that. The mind will have a significant amount of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind because it's not being polluted by the anger. It also would have gotten rid of sensual desire by the time it got rid of its ill will as well. You'll be able to speak gently with everyone and anyone, including people who you disagree with, including people who do things opposite of the way you do things. It's really easy to have loving kindness with people who do things your way. That's really easy for you, right? But it's the people who do things opposite of you, who do things differently than you, that's really challenging for you to be gentle with them. But by the time you uproot this ill will, you'll be able to actually speak gentle with everybody, even when they do things differently than you. Smiling becomes very easy for you because you're inwardly joyful. You're experiencing more and more of this unconditioned joy, this unconditioned happiness where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to be able to experience the joy. So smiling becomes really easy for you. It's very accessible to you as part of your day-to-day life. People will, in general, not be bitter and harsh and hostile to you by the time you get rid of your ill will. Because as long as you're putting out ill will, as long as you're putting out anger and hostility through your intention, speech, and actions, it's going to be coming back to you. But when you live your life where you're not putting out ill will for an extended period of time, more and more the people around you will be functioning with you in the same way that you're functioning with them, which is loving kindness, which is compassion, which is generosity. That's where your relationships will really improve. You'll still have, even as an enlightened being, occasional people who will be bitter and harsh and hostile, but your mind won't be affected by it. In the unenlightened state, you'll experience bitterness and harshness yourself when you're experiencing that coming from that person, because your mind is having sensual desire. You're having a craving for everyone to treat you a certain way. And when they treat you that way, you'll be happy. But when they don't treat you that way, the way you want, that's where your anger and frustration will come in. So by the time you get to the point where your ill will has been uprooted, you would have been loving and kind for an extended period of time in your relationships with your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, your neighbors, your coworkers. And because you've been doing that for such an extended period of time, you're going to see that these people are going to be treating you that way as well. So you'll notice that in general, people will be treating you with love and kindness. You'll no longer have an interest to argue, and you won't be arguing with anyone at all. When you're arguing, that's your craving, desire, attachment. You're trying to convince this person of a particular thing, and that's where you argue, and you're bitter and harsh and hostile. But by the time you eliminate your ill will, you won't be arguing with anybody. You'll just understand how unwise that is, and you won't have that central desire there anymore. You won't have that craving to argue. And if someone attempted to start an argument with you, you would most likely just walk away in that situation because you're just not interested in it. You know where that leads. It leads to broken relationships. It leads to difficulty sleeping. It leads to challenges and difficulties within your own mind. So why put yourself in that situation? So you would end up most likely just walking away. When you're have eliminated your ill will, you'll see your personal and professional relationships will all be at ease. They'll be harmonious, that you won't have difficulties and struggles in this relationship. Where right now you might have certain relationships where you're struggling in, typically people that are closest to you, like your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children. This is where the most difficulties are when you're in the unenlightened state. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have those difficulties and struggles anymore. What you'll end up doing is there's certain relationships that you're in now that are difficult and struggle for you. You'll end up choosing to, most likely in the cases where you're not committed to those relationships, is step away from those relationships and just move on. That you'll just end the relationship just by choosing to move on in the relationship, that you're no longer interested in this relationship, you're not committed to it, there's too much bitterness and harshness and hostility, and you'll just choose to move on. There's a second category of relationships where you're more committed to. You're having struggles in those relationships too, but you're committed to those relationships. Maybe like your parents or your siblings or your life partner, your children. But what you'll do there is you'll actually work on your own mind. You'll do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. And then you'll be able to be better in those relationships. And you'll actually improve that through your transformation of your mind. Then there's a third category of relationships, like are brand new people that you've never even met yet. You don't even know who they are right now. You don't even know their names. But as you interact with those new people, you'll only ever be loving and kind and warm and gentle. And that's what you'll be experiencing coming back to you in those relationships. So these are the three categories of relationships and how you actually clear out your unwholesome results that you're experiencing because of your own bitterness, your own hostility. That's what's producing the bitterness and hostility coming back to you. When you clean that up in your mind, you're going to also need to clean up your relationships. So there's certain relationships that you're going to need to let go of and just move on from and realize that it's not going to work. You're not committed to it and you're just going to move on. And then there's certain relationships that you're committed to that you're going to need to work on your own mind. And then when you are now functioning in those relationships for a long-term period of time, you'll see that they'll improve because you've improved your mind and you're improving the way you're interacting with that person. So the relationship will improve. And then that third category relationship are brand new people that you haven't even met yet. You'll only ever be loving and kind with them. And now that's what you'll experience coming back. So you'll have cleaned up all your relationships where you get to a point where everyone in your life that you're spending time with, you just have harmonious relationships with everybody. You don't have difficulties and struggles any longer. So this is how you'll get to that point. And it'll take many years for that work to be done because you need to do the work on your mind and you need to have enough interactions with these people that you're now experiencing improved results. But keep in mind, just because you are improving the condition of your mind doesn't mean the other people are going to snap and instantly improve the condition of their mind and what they're experiencing, right? Because in the past, you've been bitter and harsh and hostile to this person. And now when you actually transform your mind, they're going to still be bitter and harsh and hostile to you. That's your what we call old unwholesome karma coming back to you. You're going to need to experience that. I'll give you some examples from my life. When I was growing up, I was grew up in a very hostile and bitter environment, so I had a lot of hostility in my mind. But when you meet people that are new, particularly a potential life partner, you end up, you're in that honeymoon phase. You're kind of trying to put on your best foot forward, and you're being, really kind, really polite. So when I met my current wife, I was like that, right? I was kind of polite and respectful, especially for the first month or so, right? You're very kind, very loving, very warm and gentle, but slowly but surely you kind of become unraveled a little bit and they start seeing this bitterness and harshness in your mind, right? So that's what I did for a period of time. And we were together, we've been together now for 19, 20 years, but for the first 11 years, I was pretty bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations. I was loving and kind and respectful here and there, but I was bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations. But at the 11th year mark, I realized how difficult my life had been and how many broken relationships I had had and how I kept struggling through life. And I decided to do something different. And that's when I started learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. And I started making this transformation to my life. But her mind was still angry. I had been angry and bitter and harsh to her. So there were times where I was completely calm, completely peaceful. I'd come home, I'd walk into the house and she'd just start yelling at me. She'd start yelling and hollering at me and telling me about all kinds of bad things and how bad of a person I was and all this kind of stuff. And I would just walk away. That's what I would do. I would just walk away. Where in the past, before I had trained my mind, I would stand there and fight. I would be trying to yell and holler at her and tell her how bad of a person she was and how she made a mistake in this and that and this and that. But now, understanding that that's unwise to put out bitterness and harshness because it's just going to come back to you, I just chose to walk away. So I did that for several weeks. Then, after she was being bitter and harsh and hostile, still, when I would come home every once in a while, I would sit there and I would listen to her, and I would listen to her, and I would listen to her because I knew she had to get it all out of her system, right? And sometimes I would say, anything else? Anything else? Anything else? And she'd get it all out of her system. And I'd say, thank you, dear. And then I'd why her and I'd walk away. Right. And then I did that for a while. I had control over my mind. And then I would come home and sometimes she would be yelling and hollering and telling me how horrible a husband I was and all the bad things I did in the past and all these different things. And I would listen to her and I'm like, you're right. I was a terrible husband. I did all those things. I was wrong. But what about now? Because now she had about a year and a half of me walking away every time she was angry and frustrated. She's like, you're not doing that stuff anymore. I'm the one who's angry. You're not angry anymore. And I would say, thank you, dear. And I'd walk away. And slowly but surely, after about a year and a half, she transformed her mind where she wasn't bitter and harsh and hostile. But I had to transform my mind first. I had to get to a point where I wasn't being bitter and harsh and hostile to her, right? So when her bitterness and harshness and hostility was coming towards me, it was like burying it in the sand and extinguishing it. And now I would just either walk away, which was the first part, or I would just sit there and listen for a little while because I had control over my mind. And then I'd walk away because I knew this was my karma. I had to experience this. And then lastly, what I would do is I would sit there and listen to her and I'd agree with her. I'd be like, you're right. I was a terrible husband. But what about now? She's like, you're not that anymore. You're not doing that. I was like, yeah, thank you. Thank you, dear. And I'd walk away. I did the same thing with my mom too. Growing up as a child, there was a lot of bitterness and harshness in our relationship, a lot of resentment for the things that I felt that my mom should have done because I had certain expectations of my mom and she never met those expectations. But that's the problem, is my expectations. I had to get those out of the way, right? Because your parents are never going to meet your expectations. I've never met one person who has ever said their parents they agreed with their parents 100% of the time, right? So those expectations you have of your parents, they're always going to fall short of those. And now you're going to be bitter and frustrated and harsh because your central desire isn't getting fulfilled. So when me and mom were together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off. You might actually have people in your life like this too, that there would be fireworks that would go off. So I decided to change, right? For a long time, I was trying to change mom, but then I figured out that that wasn't going to work and I needed to work on my own mind. So I started doing loving kindness meditation and the things that I'm teaching you here. And then slowly but surely, my mind transformed. And now when I would spend time with mom, maybe we'd be on the phone and she'd be bitter and harsh and hostile with me, right? And I would just say, Mom, I love you so much. I know I've been this way with you in the past where I've been angry and frustrated, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to get off the phone. I love you, Mom. Take care. Be well. And she'd be confused because she was so used to her being bitter, harsh, and hostile and me being bitter, harsh, and hostile back that when she was getting this loving kindness coming to her, her mind was almost like, does not compute. It was like, like a computer syntax error or something like that, right? But I would go away and maybe I wouldn't talk to her for 3 months or 6 months sometimes, right? And then we would start talking again. And then we would start talking, we'd have conversations, but it was only a matter of a few weeks or a few months that she'd be bitter and harsh and hostile about something. And I'll say, Mom, I'm so sorry for what I did in the past. I know I did these kinds of things with you too, but I really would like to prioritize our relationship and getting to a place where we can be loving and kind with each other. I'm going to get off the phone, Mom. I love you so much. Bye-bye. And I would get off the phone. And slowly but surely over time, she realized if I'm interested in talking to my son, I'm going to need to be loving and kind because every time I'm bitter and harsh and hostile, he goes away. So she started transforming her mind and she started changing. And now she started being loving and kind. So the last 10 years of her life, we didn't have a harsh word between the two of us, where previously it was like fireworks were going off whenever we were together. She'd pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room, and I'd pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room. But I started doing something different. When she picked up the rubber ball of anger and threw it around the room, I just let it lose its energy and roll to the corner. And when it rolled to the corner and it lost its energy, there was no more anger in the room. It wasn't bouncing around anymore because I had gotten rid of my anger, and then she chose to get rid of her anger. She didn't want to play that game anymore. She didn't want to throw the ball around because there was nobody throwing it back at her, right? So this is what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to walk away from the people who are being bitter and harsh and hostile, so that they can see that you're disinterested in interacting with them when they're bitter and harsh and hostile. And what's going to give you the mental discipline to be able to do that is the Eightfold Path, which includes the breathing mindfulness meditation, which includes the loving kindness meditation, and all the other techniques that the Buddha teaches you. If you gradually practice those more and more, you'll get the mental discipline to be able to walk away from those situations. Because when you turn around and you fight, then you're going to get hostility and bitterness coming back to you. So you would like to transform your relationships in that way. Some of them you're going to need to walk away from. Some of them you're going to need to work on your own mind, and then you'll be better in those relationships. And others are brand new relationships you'll only ever be loving and kind in, and that's what's going to transform all of that. By the time you get rid of your ill will, making new friends will be effortless, because people can sense your hostility and bitterness, and people will be hesitant to interact with you. But when you're being loving and kind and warm and gentle, people can sense that too, and they'll be very interested in spending time with you because they feel that warmth, they feel that love, and they'll feel that kindness. So you'll find it very easy to make friends with the people around you. So do you guys have any questions on ill will, what it is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, or how to know that you've eliminated it? Curtis? Yep.
I don't know if it's directly related to ill will, but it was something that you mentioned just now about enduring your unwholesome gamma that you put out in the past, your ill will, that you have to endure your unwholesome gamma now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that relate to like the cycle of new existence? Like if you don't extinguish all of your unwholesome gamma, then it's going to lead to this rebirth? Is that why it's important to endure the unwholesome gamma now instead of just avert and push it away, because then you're not extinguishing that gamma?
Yes. Yeah, because it's craving, desire, attachment that is the fuel that causes rebirth. That's what causes discontentedness too, but that's what causes rebirth is your craving, desire, attachment. So when you extinguish your craving, desires, attachments, you're no longer going to be making decisions through those. But even still, you're going to have unwholesome karma coming back to you because it's old unwholesome karma. So basically, let's just say you can't do this, but let's just say you could snap your fingers and instantly practice the teachings of the Buddha perfectly today. Well, you're going to still experience unwholesome karma coming back to you because you've done some unwise things in the past, and that all has to come back to you. And you need to extinguish all of that. So in that situation where my wife is being bitter and harsh and hostile with me, I needed to extinguish that. One of the ways that I could have done that is I could have just walked away from the relationship, right? That's an option. You can walk away from the relationship, no longer choose to associate with that person. That will allow you to extinguish that. But in this situation, I was interested in having this relationship. I was committed to the relationship. So that's why I chose to work on my mind, and then I could be better in the relationship. And then it helped her too, because she's now transformed her mind. She's completely peaceful. There's no arguing. There's no bitterness and hostility. None of that stuff for many, many, many years. Our house doesn't have any of that stuff. Even with my son, my wife, me, there's never any arguing at all. So where we oftentimes try to change other people and we think that that's what's going to create change, you actually need to change your own mind. And then by you functioning differently, the people around you will function differently. But yeah, that unwholesome karma that's coming back to you, you need to extinguish it, because if you don't, then there's going to be karma to experience in the future. So you gradually, over multiple years, bring your life up to this point where you're practicing the Eightfold Path perfectly. And now you got to live your life that way for an extended period of time. And that's what's going to extinguish all your unwholesome karma. Because in the past, where people would be bitter and harsh and hostile to you without understanding the Eightfold Path, you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile right back. But when you understand this Eightfold Path and you have the wisdom of right view, right intention, right speech, and all these other teachings, now you know that that's unwise. And now instead of being bitter and harsh and hostile back, you choose to be loving and kind. And sometimes the most loving and kind thing you can do is walk away. That's sometimes the best thing to do. And now that'll help you to extinguish this karma. And now there won't be any unwholesome karma to experience in any future life, because there's not going to be one. Mm-hmm.
And a second question I had was, the ill will generally comes as a result of the sensual desire not getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it feels like, well, if I can just focus on the sensual desire,
mm-hmm.
ill will kind of naturally just fall off. Is that kind of, or should I be focused on reducing ill will as like a single goal,
mm-hmm.
along with sensual desire, or just work on sensual desire, because that's probably likely the most strongest pollution that I have. And
yeah, you need to do both. By reducing and eliminating your sensual desire, it will reduce and help eliminate the ill will, but just working on sensual desire alone won't eliminate the ill will, because in situations where you aren't getting your sensual desire fulfilled, the ill will come up. So the way that I think about it, even though these are both, roots, they're both mental objects, one of the ways to think about it is sensual desire is the root, the ill will is the leaves. You've got to clip the leaves in order to be able to go down and uproot the sensual desire out of the mind. So you need to focus on both. But if you're focusing on sensual desire, it's also helping you with your ill will as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have a question about the different categories of the relationship that you mentioned earlier. The first category is the relationship we just have to walk away from, and the second being the one we need to work on. So the question is, I feel like a lot of time we're actually relying on those kind of discontentness or ill will as a signal to us that there's something wrong about the relationship, and we might have to look at it and evaluate whether we want to continue or not. So how would you say, like, with the effort to eliminate these kind of ill will and discontentness, and how do we determine when is a good moment to walk away and when is not?
Okay, so the anger that you experience in a relationship isn't an indication of what's going on in the relationship. It's an indication of what's going on in your own mind. This is part of establishing right view, the very first step on the Eightfold Path, where you learn that it's your own craving, desire, attachment. You're wanting this person to be a certain way. That's the craving for permanence, but yet you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing, but the mind craves this permanence, wanting this person to be a certain way. And now if they meet those criteria, you'll be happy and excited. But there's nobody else in the world other than you that does things your way. You're the only person in the world that does things your way 100% of the time. So if you can only be happy and peaceful when people do things your way, you can only be happy and peaceful with yourself. And that's probably even challenging sometimes, right? To be happy and peaceful with yourself, because you put expectations on yourself and you don't meet those expectations. So the feelings aren't an indication of how the relationship's going. The feelings are an indication that you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind. So you've got to be able to see that wisdom, because in the past, you've based your relationship decisions based on your feelings. But that's part of the lack of wisdom that the mind has, that it doesn't understand that those feelings are actually coming from your own mind. So once you establish right view and you see that it's your own mind that's producing these feelings, you understand that the feelings are just indicating that you have craving in your mind. It doesn't tell you anything about the relationship itself. The way you make decisions based in your relationships is based on things like the 5 precepts. that if you understand the 5 precepts, that you would like to practice these in order for you to experience wholesome results in your day-to-day life. You're not interested in killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants. But there's more details on this because the Buddha's words are much more illuminating than this. Oftentimes that's how people translate them, but they're actually much more detailed than that. And you need to be able to understand how to apply these in your own life, because if you're not applying those in your own life, then you're going to be experiencing unwholesome results. So if there's other people in your life that you're choosing to be involved in and they're not practicing those things and you're choosing to involve them in your life, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So for example, let's just say you have a life partner who's taking substances, who's regularly drinking alcohol, using drugs and things like this. Well, you don't need to be angry about that in order to give you an indication that it's unwise to be in this relationship. The anger doesn't do anything for you. It just clouds your mind and makes it difficult for you to make a wise decision. Instead, you can base your decisions of whether you would like to be in this relationship or not based in wisdom, that this individual is causing harm to themselves through ingesting substances like alcohol and drugs and things like this. They're getting arrested. They're getting drunk driving cases. They're going to court. They're spending money to defend themselves with lawyers. They're having to pay bail and all these other things. And this is detracting from the life that you could create with this person. So you don't need the anger in order to help you see this is unwise to be in this relationship. And you would maybe be better off to end the relationship and move on. Or let's just say this person was physically hitting you, right, and abusing you physically. You don't need anger to tell you that this is unwise, because if this person is choosing to cause harm to your physical body, then they have ill will. And you're not interested in surrounding yourself with people who have ill will towards you. If someone has ill will towards you, then that means they're not interested in seeing good things happen for you. They would like to see bad things happen for you. And if you surround yourself with those type of people, your life's going to be difficult and you're going to have lots of struggles. So wherever you see people have ill will towards yourself, towards you, you would like to distance yourself from those types of individuals. So if this person was physically abusing you, or let's just say they're cheating on you regularly and going out and having sex with different people, well, that's going to promote all kinds of difficulties in their life, right? They can get sexually transmitted diseases that maybe gets transmitted to you. Those other people could get jealous and maybe they come looking for you to fight you and beat you up or murder you, or maybe they damage your material property and possessions. It's going to promote all kinds of difficulties. So when you see the natural law of karma, of cause and effect that the Buddha is teaching you, you start basing your decisions in that wisdom rather than any kind of emotions, because emotions aren't an indication of whether this would be a helpful relationship or a beneficial relationship or not. It's just telling you that you have craving and desire attachment in your mind.
That's very helpful, and thank you. I think having said that, I think there are a lot of obvious situations we can apply that. Maybe I think my question is more around those kind of nuanced situations. Say someone is not putting you in danger, not harming you. Let's take the concept of compatibility, right, with a partner, because I'm thinking if I take it to the other extreme, which is if we be able to eliminate all the ill will, doesn't that mean I can be with anybody because I'm very easy to be with someone? But I also don't think that maybe that's true, because we all have like different disposition and we may prefer to be certain ways. And this is what I mean earlier. Sometimes maybe when I'm feeling very good, when I'm with someone, that's my signal. Okay, maybe that's a good compatible partner. Or maybe when I'm feeling a bit off, and then that's kind of my kind of compass I've been using, whether this is a good match or not. So maybe the question more is within this realm of someone who's just a good person, but may not be necessarily a good person for you. How do we determine it's a category 1 or the second category that you want to commit it to?
So this is all based on your commitment. Are you committed to this relationship? would you like to see this relationship be long term? And would they like to see the relationship be long term? Because if they're not interested in the relationship being long term, it doesn't matter what you choose to do, the relationship's not going to be long term. So to determine whether you should step away from the relationship or whether you're going to work on your own mind and be committed and try to resolve things, it's going to be a decision based on your level of commitment. Would you like to see this relationship be long term? And what's going to determine that is just your own decision making, right? Based on the relationship itself. There's not going to be any indicators like, oh, this person is a doctor, or this person lives in this particular place. This is how we tend to make decisions about life partners prior to understanding these teachings, is we usually look at their appearance. Are we attracted to them physically? What is their social status? What is their financial status? These kinds of things. The way that I made the decision about my wife, yes, I thought she was physically attractive, but the thing that really attracted me to her was her mind. There was a situation very early on when I first got to know her that she could have easily lied to me, and I probably would have never known and never found out. But she chose to tell the truth, and telling the truth was actually detrimental to her. It would have actually caused her a lot of difficulties, depending on how I would have looked at it. But she chose to tell the truth, and that was very attractive to me, because by the time you are with a partner long term, the body's going to deteriorate, right? The physical attractiveness is going to deteriorate over time. Even the money, right? That can actually go away. That's not permanent, right? The material possessions, the social status, all those things, that's all going to change because it's impermanent. But what you're going to be with is this person's mind. And you need to ask yourself, is this the type of person that I'm interested in spending time with? So that's why you'd like to look at, how do they make decisions? How does this person make decisions? Because your feelings aren't an indication of anything. Oftentimes people think that love is a feeling. Love is not a feeling. It's not an emotion, but that's what people think. It's their cravings, desires, attachments that are getting those pleasant feelings. When you first get together with someone and you're getting all those pleasant feelings, that's not your love. That's your craving, desire, attachment is getting fulfilled. And now you're getting conditioned, pleasant feelings. And then over time, those cravings get extinguished and you're no longer getting the pleasant feelings any longer, the conditioned pleasant feelings, and people think that the love is gone. So they'll say, I've fallen out of love with you. So if someone's falling in love and out of love with someone, that's actually not love, that's craving, desire, attachment. And if you're basing your decisions off of that, then you're going to be making unwise decisions, because you're basing your decisions and emotions and feelings, which ultimately comes back to your cravings, desires, attachments. So what you would like to look at is the person's mind and how they make decisions. And one of the things I noticed about my wife, while she was not perfect when I met her, neither was I, she made decisions wisely in terms of how she interacted with people. She was generally a loving and kind person. She was honest and trustworthy. She was loyal. She was committed. She was generous. These are the qualities that are still around today. So that's what you would like to look at with the person, is look at the quality of their mind. And that's what's going to lead you to determining whether you would like to have a long-term relationship with this person. But at the same time, you need to be working on your own mind to develop those qualities as well, because if you're coming together with a partner, both of you guys are going to be imperfect beings by the time you get together. By the time you get rid of this ill will, because one of the things you mentioned is like, if you don't have desire and you don't have ill will, you could just be with anybody. Well, by the time you get to this point that you're eliminating your ill will, you would have already made a decision whether you're going to be with a partner or not. You can get to enlightenment as a single person, right, without having a life partner, or you can get to enlightenment while having a life partner. It's just that your relationship is going to be completely different by the time you get to enlightenment. By the time you get to the point where you've eliminated central desire and ill will, if you're in a life partnership, you guys are basically like best friends. You don't want anything from each other. You don't expect anything from each other. You're living together because you truly enjoy spending time with each other. But your lives, for all intents and purposes, are basically independent. They're not dependent on you for money. You're not dependent on them for money. They aren't dependent on you for sex. You're not dependent on them for sex. In fact, by the time you get to this point, you're not having sex at all. It's just that you just truly enjoy being with this person, and you are enhancing each other's life, and you are supporting each other's life, but you're not dependent on each other. So you will have already made the decision very much earlier before you get to enlightenment, whether or not you're going to have a partner or not. And then if you're going to have a partner, as you guys are making your way through your life and you're training your mind, you guys will be getting rid of your sensual desire and ill will. And what you're going to end up with is such an amazing relationship where it's fully harmonious and you don't want or expect anything with each other. You're not arguing with each other. You're not trying to force or convince each other of anything. And you're just completely harmonious in your relationship. So, yeah, that's what it comes from. Okay. Yep.
If we can circle back to the karma that is you need to experience as a result of past relationships, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Say, for instance, in the situation with your mother and that type of relationship, prior to you or to a practitioner in that case, starting to follow the path and understanding karma and that we have to experience it as a result of our decisions or whatever, if that person dies and they're no longer in your life, do you still need to experience karma to rectify the relationship? Or how does that work when that's no longer a possibility?
Yeah, so it's not that you have to experience it from that specific person, because like if you're in a bitter and harsh and hostile relationship and you just choose to move on from the relationship, that will extinguish your karma. You still need to eliminate your craving and anger that's producing the difficulties in this relationship. Because if you just move on to another relationship and you still have craving and anger in your mind, you're just going to be producing new unwholesome karma that you have to deal with. So the karma is that you're going to need to extinguish it somehow. And extinguishing it can be just completely moving on from the relationship. So if somebody died that you were having bitterness and harshness, hostility with, and they died, you haven't fully extinguished your unwholesome karma because you still have craving and anger in your own mind. You've got to extinguish that. So by you bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance, that's what's eliminating your unwholesome karma, because now you're making less and less decisions. But you're going to need to experience the unwholesome karma coming back to you, which means if this person in you and that person was bitter and harsh and hostile all the way up to the time of their death, it's not like you're going to snap your fingers and instantly be peaceful from that point forward. You're still functioning through craving and anger. In these new relationships that you're forging, you're still experiencing unwholesome karma coming back to you in those relationships because you haven't extinguished your craving and anger and ignorance yet. So it's not from that person specifically, but it's from these other relationships.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we have got this topic covered now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to teach you what I was planning to teach you this morning, which is loving kindness meditation, because this is one of the solutions to the ill will. You need to be able to understand what this is and how to practice it. So out of the 4 meditations that the Buddha taught that loving kindness meditation is the second highest quality of wholesome karma that you could actually produce. Breathing mindfulness meditation and doing that is the highest quality because you're eliminating craving from the mind. But then also the second highest quality is the loving kindness meditation. So what you're doing here is you're eliminating anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions. Those are the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating, and you're cultivating the wholesome quality of loving kindness for all beings. What loving kindness is as I shared, it's active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is not a feeling. It is a mental state that is unconditioned, that you're going to need to cultivate to the point where it's permeating in your mind and you just always have it available to you. That you don't want anything or expect anything from this person. You just love them as they are. Again, if you're falling in love and out of love with people, or if you think love hurts and love is painful, that's not the love that's causing that. That's the craving, desire, attachment that's causing that. When you get to true love in loving kindness, when you get to unconditional love, it actually doesn't hurt. There's nothing you want or expect from this person. You just love them as they are. Understanding that you can disagree with someone's choices and decisions while still loving them as a person. Oftentimes people think you have to agree with someone's choices and decisions in order to love them. But that's the expectations. That's the craving. That's not the love. That's you wanting them to be a certain way. What you would like to do is get rid of that, where you separate the choices and decisions that someone makes from the person themselves, where the person, you would like to have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. I don't suggest you do this, but if you went out into the world today and you killed somebody and you called me from jail and said, David, I killed somebody, I murdered someone, will you come see me? Sure, I'll come see you. I come with a smile. I'm not going to be angry at you. I'm not going to be frustrated, right? I can separate the choices and decisions that you made. I can disagree with those while still loving you as a person, meaning that I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. There's nothing you did in order to cause me to start loving you. So therefore, there's nothing you can do for me to stop loving you. It's not possible. But what people are doing when they say they're falling in love and out of love with people is that this person is meeting your expectations. This person is doing what you want. When you first get in a relationship, your expectations are very low. You're just interested in getting to know this person. And after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you've had enough pleasant feelings from all your interactions with them that you get to a point where you say, I love you, or I've fallen in love with you. And now you treat them nicely. You're very kind, very loving, very polite, very respectful. You might get them gifts. You might invite them out to different events. But then over time, you start seeing that they do things differently than you. You start seeing this impermanence, which is normal. You start seeing this impermanence and you start getting angry and frustrated because they do things differently than you. And now you guys break up. And you say, I don't love you anymore. I have fallen out of love with you. And now you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to that person. That's the ill will because they haven't met your expectations. Your central desire isn't getting met. That's why you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to them. That's not the love that's causing all of that. There could be love in there, but it's getting polluted and tainted with these cravings, desires, attachments. So we grow up with parents who typically we know are supposed to love us, but they're putting expectations on us and trying to maybe even control us and tell us what we should or shouldn't be doing. And now we think that that's love. So we start replicating that in our relationships, not realizing that that's not the love. That's the craving, desire, attachment. I'm sure your parents have love in their mind for you, but it's actually being tainted by these cravings and these expectations. And now when they're putting that on you, you think that maybe that's the love, and that's what you're maybe replicating when you go out into the world. But what you would like to do is get those expectations out of the way, where you're not trying to force and control people to do things a certain way, because then your love can actually shine through, where you can disagree with someone's choices and decisions and still love them as a person, meaning you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. So I love every single one of you, even without having ever met you before. Before you ever came here, I love you. That's why I choose to come here and teach these teachings. And I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I love you as you are. But when you're interested in improving and becoming a better person, then sure, I will help you with that. But I love you as you are. I don't want anything. I don't expect anything. I'm not trying to force or control you to be any different way than you are. But if you're interested in learning how to train your mind and do these things, then I will teach you how to do that. And that's coming from my love, that I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. It's unconditioned. There's nothing you did to earn that from me. So there's nothing you could do for me to stop loving you. No matter what you do, I will still have that love there, where I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. So that's what loving kindness is. It's the antidote or the wholesome root or the remedy to anger. It's the exact opposite of anger, because anger and hostility is coming out because you're not getting what you want, what you expect. And the mind thinks that if I'm bitter and harsh and hostile to this person, I will fear them into doing things my way. The love is just the opposite. Love is, I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I just love you as you are. I would like to see you be well. Because this craving, desire, attachment that's masquerading as love, what the mind's saying is, I love you, therefore I want you to be with me because you make me happy. I love you, therefore I want you to be with me because you make me happy. It's all about me. right? What true love is, or unconditional love is I love you. I would like to see you be well. I don't want anything or expect anything from you. This is very different than what we're used to. So your mind needs to learn intellectually what is true love, because oftentimes we don't learn this. Nobody sat you down and taught you what love is, right? Nobody ever taught you that. You just kind of experienced things in your life and you kind of assumed this is love. What my parents are doing with me, this is love. But that's not love. That's the craving, desire, attachment, where they're putting expectations on you and trying to control you. They think it's love because of their lack of wisdom, and that's where your mind adopted those same thoughts. But what true love is to love someone unconditionally, that there's nothing that they did to earn your love, so therefore there's nothing they can do to fall out of love with you. So that's why I share that this active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. Because oftentimes what we're taught is don't respect others until they respect you, right? Don't respect others until they respect you. Well, if everybody practiced this, nobody would be respecting anybody, right? Because you would say, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. And they would say, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. So now we're all in our respective corners. Nobody's respecting anybody. Right? Well, if you did that with your love, where you're like, I'm not going to love you until you love me. And then they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to love you until you love me. So now everybody's stuck, right? It's like a big log jam. So you're not interested in judging people and be like, oh, I like the way that guy looks, or I like the way that girl smells, or I like the amount of money that they have, or I like the way that they treat me. And because they treat me this way, now I will love them. That is the central desire. That is the craving. What you would like to get to is that you have a genuine interest in seeing this person be well, and you don't want or expect anything from them. And sometimes loving someone means to step away from the relationship, and that's okay. You can love someone from afar. It doesn't mean that you're together, and that's what determines whether you're loving this person or not. There were times where I went away from my mom for 3 years, 5 years. I didn't talk to her at all for 3 to 5 years. I loved her during that period of time. Right? There was a time where I didn't talk to my sister for 10 years. I loved her during that time. I had love for her, meaning I had a genuine interest in seeing her be well, right? I can love somebody from afar. Loving someone doesn't mean you're all up in their life, understanding every little detail of what's going on in their life. It means you have a genuine interest in seeing this person be well. And during that period of time, we, meaning myself and my mom, or myself and my sister, we needed to be away from each other. We needed to train our mind to let go, right? So we wouldn't put expectations on each other. So this loving kindness is the antidote. It's the wholesome root to this anger. It's going to eliminate the harshness and the bitterness and the hostility, because now you can choose to love people as they are without trying to control them or pressure them or force them to do things your way. Because that's the selfishness. The mind says, I love you. As long as you're doing things my way, I'll treat you like I love you. But when you stop doing things my way, I'm not going to treat you that way anymore. I'm going to be bitter and harsh and hostile to you. That's the selfishness that the unenlightened mind has, and that's where the harshness and bitterness comes in. So the way you get rid of that is to arise this unconditional love as a mental state, where your mind just always has this unconditional love towards this person. This loving kindness is part of what's called the Brahma Viharas. You might have heard this before. This is a collection of 4 mental states that needs to be cultivated in order to be able to train the mind to get to enlightenment. This is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are things that I teach in other programs. This is where the Buddha gets kind of like the reputation of being like a doctor, where there's a certain symptom in your mind, and then he provides a prescription, and then that produces the remedy or the solution. Well, you are your own best doctor. If you understand these Brahma Viharas and you understand the symptoms, then you can actually apply the antidote. So loving kindness is the very first Brahma Vihara. So you'll learn that at some point if you decide to continue your journey on the path to enlightenment. So here's places in the Eightfold Path where loving kindness plugs into the teachings of the Buddha, where he talks about in right intention as part of the Eightfold Path, which is the core teaching that takes you to enlightenment, is the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. This non-ill will is loving kindness. It's goodwill. Because whenever you have a double negative in English, it's a positive. So non-ill will is the same as goodwill. So he's teaching you to cultivate the intention or the thinking or the thought of goodwill in your mind, because that's where your speech and your actions are going to emanate from. If you have ill will in your mind, then your speech and actions are going to emanate from that. So you would like to cultivate this intention or thinking or thought of goodwill. And he gives you a tool to be able to do that, which is the loving kindness meditation. So this is the practice that you need to cultivate on a daily basis, but then the meditation is what's helping you to be able to do that. And then if you remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, where the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness, this is to be able to have wholesome results in your relationships. That 5th factor is to speak with a mind of loving kindness. The opposite of that would be to speak with inner hate. So the natural law of Karma is that whenever you speak with a mind of inner hate, it's going to produce unwholesome karma for you. Because remember, the Buddha's not teaching you the way the world should be, or the way he's not giving you rules or commandments of how to do things. He's actually teaching you this natural law of cause and effect so that you can make wise choices and experience wholesome results. So whenever you make decisions with a mind of ill will, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So that's why cultivating this intention of goodwill and then speaking with a mind of loving kindness is actually going to produce wholesome results. You're going to see your relationships improve as well as the condition of your mind. But how could you speak with a mind of loving kindness if you didn't have some tool to cultivate it? So that's why he's teaching you loving kindness meditation as part of the path. Here's a teaching from the Buddha where he was actually teaching his students. He said, I'm teaching you to speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness. He says, but other people are going to speak to you in an untimely way. People are going to speak to you falsehoods. People are going to speak to you harshly. People are going to speak to you unbeneficially. People are going to speak to you with a mind of inner hate. And when they do that, this is what he taught. He said, herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train monks. So the example here is when someone's coming at you with bitterness, harshness, and hostility, you need to be able to train your mind to be unaffected, where you don't utter any evil words, right? Where you have loving kindness towards this being. That's the example I gave you with my mom, right? When she was coming at me with bitterness and harshness and hostility, I remained unaffected, right? I didn't utter any evil words. I just had this loving kindness, and that's what transformed all of that. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you this, because that's what's going to transform your mind and transform your relationships. But you shouldn't think that you're going to go out into the world, snap your fingers, and instantly be able to do this, right? That's why it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you're going to be able to do this, right? So you're going to need to gradually train your mind in this direction. You're going to experience some anger between now and enlightenment. You're probably going to have some harsh words with somebody between now and enlightenment. It's going to happen. But what you need to be able to do is double down on that and really aim to improve in each one of those situations. Look at those situations, see where you made unwise choices, and now improve through the training. What the Buddha is talking about here is this is the ideal. This is what it is that he's guiding you to be able to accomplish. That's what would be wise for you. But now there's a whole path that's going to help you to be able to get to that point where you can now practice in this way. So don't put the expectation on yourself that you should be able to do this today, but this is the ideal of what you're working towards. But you would never be able to work towards that if you didn't understand what the ideal is. So the Buddha is teaching you the ideal, but then he's giving you all the tools and the techniques of how to get there. And that's what the loving kindness meditation is part of. Here's some other teachings from the Buddha. This first one, he's actually teaching his son. Some people think that the Buddha left his family and he never came back. But actually, that's not true. He left for 6 years and he ended up coming back to the area where his family was. His wife, his son, his mother, which was his stepmother, other people from his family ordained with him and actually were training with him. So this is him actually teaching his son. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is how a Buddha teaches. Very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't have to figure out what they're saying. You don't have to interpret their words. They're just explaining it very clearly. And you can see very clearly what he's saying is loving kindness meditation is what's going to eliminate ill will. That's what's going to be helping you to eliminate the ill will out of your mind. So in terms of this fetter of ill will, it's loving kindness that's going to address that. Here he says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Again, very clear, very concise. You can't confuse that. He's explaining exactly what needs to happen. Here he's talking about the meditation. Here he's talking more about the speech and actions, that you need to go out into the world and interact with people through your speech and actions, right? So he gives you this guidance in other parts of his teachings too. Here's another teaching from the Buddha that includes loving kindness. You might think that during the lifetime of a Buddha, that he's the only game in town, that he's the only one teaching and that everybody knows he's a Buddha and that you would be interested to learn with that person. But that's not the case. When a Buddha is teaching and when a Buddha exists in the world, people don't necessarily know that that person's a Buddha. And there's going to be other people in the world who are teaching as well. In those other people that are learning, the Buddha knew that it was his teachings that led to enlightenment. But these other people were learning with other teachers, thinking that it was going to lead to enlightenment. So those other students and the students of the Buddha would oftentimes get together and they would kind of compare notes, right? What is your teacher teaching you? What is your teacher teaching you, right? Because not everybody knew that he was a Buddha. So there were other people teaching at the time. So when the Buddhist students would get together with these other students, they would talk about what it is that they were learning, right? So this is a teaching from the Buddha where he's teaching his students. He's saying, suppose they ask, meaning those other students from other communities, suppose they ask, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. So sometimes people ask, what is unarisen anger? Because they don't understand that. What unarisen anger is right now, you're probably not angry. You're just sitting here listening to someone talk, right? And you're not angry. Your mind is just completely calm or whatever it is, right? You're just listening to someone talk. But inside your mind, you have this deeply rooted container of ill will, that fetter of ill will. That's unarisen anger. If something happens where one of your cravings get triggered, where one of your central desires get triggered, that is going to rise up, right? That's unarisen anger. That fetter of ill will is unarisen anger. And what he's saying is the way to eliminate that unarisen anger is loving kindness meditation, right? And practicing loving kindness. And then what arisen anger is once that anger gets kicked up and now it's circulating in the mind, the way to get rid of that is also loving kindness. So this is the antidote. This is the remedy to anger. So whenever you see anger in your mind, you can actually pull out the antidote, right? So you're checking in at the airport, once again, using the same analogy. You're checking in at the airport. You're going to give, this happened to me, by the way. That's why I use this example. I was checking in one time and they're like, your flight's not leaving for 3 hours. You can't check in yet, right? And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, thanks, right? So if you notice anger starting to come up in that situation, then you know right away it's coming from your own mind. It's coming from a craving for permanence. You want every single airplane to take off on time. You just heard something disagreeable in your ear, which is your plane's not taking off for 3 hours, and now you're going to need to sit there in the airport. That's the central desire that's not getting fulfilled. You didn't hear something agreeable to you. You heard something disagreeable, and now this anger is coming up. Well, rather than being bitter and harsh and hostile to the airline person, instead, you know the remedy. The remedy is loving kindness. And if you've been cultivating this in your mind through loving kindness meditation, it'll be readily accessible to you. You can apply effort to bring that in. And you can say, you know what, sir, thank you so much. I didn't realize my plane wasn't taking off for 3 hours. Thank you for letting me know. By the way, do you recommend a certain restaurant? Is there a restaurant that's really good around here? Right? You might ask them that question, right? So that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is when you have unarisen anger, like right now, if you're practicing loving kindness, it's going to help break that up. But if you have arisen anger that's actually coming up in your mind at any point during your day, you can bring in loving kindness, and that's what's going to squash it, right? But don't expect it to be like a magic pill. You can't just snap your fingers and immediately get rid of it, right? So it's going to take time for you to gradually train the mind in this direction so that this is permeating in your mind more and more. So before I teach you how to do loving kindness meditation, any questions on this? Anything you'd like to ask? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about how exactly does it work? Because when I saw that loving kindness meditation is the antidote, the first question popped in my head is that in a situation, let's say someone was literally hostile towards you, I cannot just close my eye and start a meditation. So would you say how it works is essentially I have to practice loving kindness meditation regularly, not necessarily directing at anyone in particular, almost like I have to stock up my own battery of loving kindness so that when a situation happen where a particular individual that were, let's say, trying to trigger me, so that I can go to my battery and say, now apply the loving kindness I have for all beings towards you.
Yes, that's exactly what you're doing. You're rewiring the mind to be loving and kind. So it's permeating in the mind and it's accessible to you at all times. And while you're on your way to that, it's like charging up a battery or filling up a gas tank, and it's going to get depleted sometimes, and then you need to charge it back up and it's depleted. But eventually, when you do this enough, it's just always in your mind. It never gets depleted. That's an unconditioned mental quality that's just always there. And your mind's been rewired because you've gotten rid of your sensual desire, you've gotten rid of your ill will, and the loving kindness is just always there. But in order to get that out, you need to bring in this loving kindness continuously through meditation, but also through your intention, speech, and actions in your day-to-day life. The meditation is helping you to cultivate the mental state that your mind will be wired with loving kindness, right? And getting rid of this ill will, getting that out of there so that now your mind is essentially rewired. That's what you're doing. So instead of going down this well-worn path of anger and hostility, which leads to broken relationships and arguments and all that stuff, you are getting out your machete and you're forming a new path and you're cutting through the bushes and you're choosing to go down this path of loving kindness. And now your mind goes down this path more and more and more. It doesn't even look at that path because it's been overgrown. So yeah, what you're talking about is exactly right. But just be sure you understand that it's not just the meditation that is the loving kindness. The meditation is the technique that's helping the mind to cultivate the ability to have this unconditioned loving kindness at all times.
That makes sense. And when you say, in addition to loving kindness as a daily practice, is also the right speech, even though when I apply my right speech, it may be applied to the other people who are not going to be hostile towards me in the future. Is the right way to think about it is to train my mind to not get in the habit to be angry and hostile towards other people. So when another individual are acting like that, I'm not jumping into that kind of like a habit of doing that.
Exactly. That's the rewiring of the mind. So instead of reacting with hostility and bitterness, instead you respond with loving kindness. And sometimes the response is you just walk away. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Question?
This is kind of just a step back a little bit, like the referring to the intention or thought or idea of non-ill will or goodwill. But just in general, like right intention, it's like, is that like the intentional or unintentional thought or idea that arises in the mind? I feel like sometimes just through daily life, I'll experience something and then there's like this thought that arises, but it's not like I intentionally thought it, but it could be unwholesome, or is there a distinguish between unintentional or intentional thought?
So those thoughts could easily be coming from the subconscious mind. We were talking about that earlier in the retreat, where prior to the second jhana, the mind can have it'll have this subconscious mind where the pollution will come up, where you have these unwholesome thoughts. It could be from that, or it could be from the conscious mind, where it's just having thoughts. Like you didn't necessarily intend to have that unwholesome thought, but that unwholesome thought is in your mind. And now when you notice that with your mindfulness, you would then like to apply the right effort to eliminate that. That's what's going to rewire the mind, that you don't allow the mind to have that unwholesome thought, because otherwise it'll just stay wired that way. So whenever you see that with your mindfulness, you would like to get rid of that. And then ultimately what you will end up with is you will just have always wholesome intentions, where the mind is just permeating with this loving kindness. And that would be right intention, because now you're having the intention of goodwill in all situations.
Thank you.
And that's where that part of the path would be perfected. Okay. So now I'll share with you guys how to do loving kindness meditation. So what we do is we start loving kindness meditation with the chanting like normal. Remember, this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. It's today used in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. That every 2 weeks they would chant his teachings in order to be able to use it as a learning tool, as a learning device. Where today we use books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts. We don't need to do chanting in order to be able to remember the teachings, but I still do it because it helps to build awareness of mind and awareness of the breath, and helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation. So if you choose to chant, that's what you'll see, that you'll get more benefit out of the meditation. So the chanting helps you to get into the meditation. Once you're in the meditation, you would like to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation. I'm going to guide you on that. That kind of prepares the mind for the loving kindness meditation. So I'm going to guide you on that, and then I'm going to give a kind of a short period, maybe just like 3 minutes, where you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation, where you're focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go, and you come back to the breath. Then after that, I'm going to come in with these phrases where you're going to hear me say things like, may I be peaceful. You would like to repeat that in your mind on the out breath. May I be safe. Again, repeat that in your own mind on the out breath. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. So each one of those, you would like to repeat it in your own mind on the out breath. Then you're going to hear me go to the next ring, which is going to be, may mom and dad be peaceful. I'm just using this as a learning tool or as a learning device, right? May mom and dad be peaceful, right? And then we're going to go safe, well, and free of discontentedness. You'd like to repeat that in your own mind. This isn't to change mom and dad. This isn't to send good vibes to mom and dad. It's not possible for you to change other people through your meditation. If it was possible for us to change other people through meditation, there'd be no such thing as murders or rapes or child abuse or anything like that, because all of us would get together and we'd sit here and meditate and change the whole world, right? It's not possible to do that, right? You're changing your own mind. So sometimes when people hear this meditation, they think it's like a prayer, that you're somehow invoking some special power to change other people. But that's not what you're doing. You're changing your mind to have loving kindness towards mom and dad. So that if you cultivate this more and more over your life, now when you spend time with mom and dad, you'll be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And that's what's going to transform your relationship, right? So you're not trying to change other people. We're going to go through successive rings of people where we're going to ultimately get to all beings, right? The way that you would like to do this is go through these different rings on your own. When you're doing this on your own, you would like to customize this. What I'm going to be doing is 6 rings that apply to all of us. Okay. Then I'm going to eventually go back to breathing mindfulness meditation. And then I'm going to come out of that with some chanting. The way that I think about it is like a loving kindness sandwich. You've got loving kindness in the middle, right? And then you've got the lettuce and tomato. That's the breathing mindfulness meditation. We've got it on both sides of the sandwich. This is a really big sandwich. Then you've got the bread that's holding it all together. That's the chanting. right? So we're going to do this together. And then afterwards on the backside, I'm going to teach you some more about how to do this meditation. So any questions on how we do it? No? Okay, so if you guys would like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, those tend to work really well with this meditation. There is a walking position, but we don't do that with loving kindness meditation. We just use the seated, lying, and standing. So I'm going to get started with the chanting. If you guys would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. The chants are over there on the cabinet. For those of you guys online, the chants on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. If you click on free books, you'll see it down towards the bottom of that page. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakewa Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sakato rokawitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa Manusang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes. And start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose and out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these phrases in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddhassa โตเอมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตเอมหาเกวตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนเอมหะเขวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมหะเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so we have a few things to talk about here to help you guys more fully understand loving kindness meditation now that you guys have had a chance to experience it. These rings that I did them to apply to all of us because all of us are meditating together and I'm guiding everybody in a meditation. But for your practice, you're going to need to customize this because there's certain people that you have anger and bitterness, hostility towards. Maybe they're currently in your life or maybe they're long in the past and you're never even going to see them again. Maybe they're even dead. You're going to need to include those people in your meditation. So you can include people based on a name or like a group of people. If you hate all politicians, you can say, may all politicians be peaceful, right? Or if you have that ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend that you're holding resentment towards, you're not going to be able to liberate your mind until you let that go. It's just harming yourself. Oftentimes people hold on to resentment thinking that they're getting back at the other person, but that's like holding on to a hot coal trying to burn somebody else. So you would like to uproot that out of your mind. It's not helping you to hold on to that resentment. So you might have to say, may Rebecca be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontent, right? Or may John or whoever, right? So normally the way people construct this and that works best is that if you start with I, meaning yourself, because you need to have loving kindness for yourself. If you don't have loving kindness for yourself, it's very difficult to have that for other people. So you always start with yourself. Then you go to maybe like a ring or two of people you currently have loving kindness for. That's why I put mom and dad, friends and family, people like this, right? Then you like to go to someone who maybe you're more neutral about. Maybe like a coworker or a neighbor. You don't exactly hate them, but you don't really love them either. You're just kind of more neutral about them, right? So you like to put maybe like a ring or two of those types of people. Then you like to get to some people that you do have anger and hatred towards. That's where I said, may anybody who calls me harm. Remember, you can't cause somebody else to be angry or frustrated. You can't cause someone else to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. If you caused harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, this harm is going to come back to you. So sometimes people hold resentment towards someone who has caused you harm. So that's why I use that. Or anybody that you've caused harm to. Maybe you feel guilty or shameful about that, right? You might need to train your mind to let that go. So you might actually need to include a specific person, right? Like I said, Rebecca, John, Robert, whoever, any name that you would like based on what's going on in your mind. And this meditation is going to change over time. When I first started this meditation, I had a lot of negative self-talk in my own mind and not a lot of inner dialogue where I was degrading and diminishing myself. So I used to do like 2 or 3 rings for myself. And then I'd do like 2 or 3 rings for my mom because I had a lot of resentment towards her. Then I'd go to all beings and then I'd be done. That was the meditation. I did that for like a good 6 months, right? Before I weared all that away. And then you kind of customize it and change it. At that time, I was in business. So maybe there was an employee that I was having difficulties with. So they would show up in my meditation for a few weeks, or maybe a customer. One time, my landlord at one of the places that we rented came in and threatened to kill me in front of all of my employees, in front of my customers, got up in my face and was yelling and hollering, threatening to kill me. He was in my meditation for a little while. When I was on my way to work, maybe somebody cut me off in traffic and I noticed anger coming up in my mind. May that person who cut me off in traffic this morning be peaceful. Right? I didn't even know who they were. Maybe for 3 days they were in my meditation. Right? And I might not even have felt anger. I might just have made it as kind of like a precaution, just to make sure that the mind didn't experience this anger and stay wired that way. So this meditation is going to be customized over time. You're going to need to move people in and move people out of your meditation as you're noticing certain things that are going on in your mind. And as you clear out anger for one person or one group of person, this other group might start shining through in your mind where you start noticing more and more anger towards that person or that group of people. So you're going to customize this over time. The Buddha gives a really good analogy about this. He talks about how if you had a digging tool and it had a wooden handle and you were digging with this wooden tool every single day, that every day you're wearing away wood from the handle of the tool, but you don't know how much wood you're wearing away from it. When you use this tool enough and the handle needs to be replaced, you're going to know that. You're not going to know each day how much wood you're wearing away from the handle, but when the handle needs to be fully replaced, you're going to know that. And he talks about the same thing, and this is what you'll experience with this anger and this ill will, that each day you're not going to know how much anger, how much ill will you're wearing away by doing this meditation, but when it's completely gone, you'll know that. Because when it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you haven't been bitter and harsh and hostile to mom or dad, you'll know that it's been worn away. It's completely gone in that particular relationship. But now you might have another one over here that you're dealing with, right? So each day you're not going to know how much you're wearing away. But when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. This meditation is really helpful at any time during the day. You could use it. But if you start off your day with this meditation, it's really nice because you go out in your day with your mind full of loving kindness, right? So now through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you can be loving and kind with the people that you interact with. But that's not to say you couldn't do it at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. or something like that, because you can, right? So you get a phone call at 2 p.m., some anger is rising up in your mind, it's triggered a craving, and now you know the antidote. Don't allow your mind to stay wired that way. Sit down and do some loving kindness meditation, right? So that's how you can use this. I would use it as a regular practice in the morning if I was you guys, because it really helps you to go out in your day to be loving and kind. But then at any point during your day, if you see anger and frustration, you can bring it in there too. Because what you would like to build up to is 2 to 3 meditations per day. This is your total meditations. So at least one of those should be loving kindness. And then you've got breathing mindfulness meditation as well. But for some people, if you have a lot of anger, a lot of hostility, if you're going through a lot of difficult times, you might be doing loving kindness meditation 3 times a day or 2 times a day. That's fine, right? And then maybe when you get over that period of time, then maybe you go back to once a day and then your breathing mindfulness meditation. So this is where you need to be your own best doctor. You need to be able to look at your mind and see what does it need. And now you understand what actually helps you with your anger, which is this loving kindness meditation. So you're going to need to customize it. It's going to gradually wear away your anger, and it's best to put it in the morning, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do it at any other time during the day. So any questions on loving kindness meditation? By the way, we're going to do this evening too. We start our session at 6:30 to give you guys a chance to practice it again.
This is in reference to may all those that have harmed me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know everyone in the world that's caused me harm. So I feel like that always will be a catch-all bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know who's slandering me right now or causing damage to my reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Could be someone I have no idea who it is. Or
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to keep that as a catch-all. Does that seem fair?
Sure, because that's going to help you for that new person who does cause you harm, and you're standing right there when it's happening and you experience it, then you're going to have loving kindness towards this person. So you could keep that in there if you like. Mm-hmm.
And then, is this only limited to people? Like, I feel like perhaps some people may have anger, resentment, ill will towards like a business that could have caused harm.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the guy that shot the United Healthcare CEO, and he was really angry and upset with the medical insurance industry as a whole.
Yep.
Or could it be like maybe a place that you've been to that was had a bad experience, and maybe you associate anger or ill will towards a place or something like that? I guess, is it only people or?
No, you can do groups, right? Because that anger towards the United Healthcare, CEO that person ended up killing, he had hostility towards all those people in the insurance industry. So it might be, may everyone in the insurance industry be peaceful, right? So ultimately it comes down to beings that the mind is having anger and hatred towards. So it could be animals, all right? Some people hate certain animals. It could be some people, I've done this before. What I used to do when I used to teach this a long time ago is each meditation I would change it. And I used to do, may all hell beings, animals, afflicted spirits, humans, heavenly beings. Sometimes I used to do, may all those who practice the teachings of the Buddha be peaceful. May all those who consider themselves to be Christian or Muslim or things like this. I used to change it around like that, where I've now gotten to this kind of standard one that I do because I think it helps people a lot to do this one. But I used to change it around like that. So you can change it, and you can use groups, you can use individuals, any being that you have anger and hatred towards, because that's what it comes down to. If someone hates, I don't think this is the case, but if someone hates chocolate, I'm sure there's someone out there that hates chocolate. You don't really hate that chocolate because you can't hate a non-living being. What you actually have is you have aversion to this chocolate, right? Or you can't love chocolate. It's not possible to love chocolate because it's not a living being, right? As you saw, the definition of loving kindness is it's to have active goodwill towards all beings, right? It's an unconditional love, this genuine interest in seeing this being be well. And this is one of the problems why it makes it difficult for people to understand what love is because they're using the word love in ways that actually refers to craving. So if you say, I love chocolate, that's not a true statement because you can't love an inanimate object, right? But people are using it that way. And now it gets confusing what love is. It also gets very confusing because of love songs, right? Someone's like, I'm down on my knees, begging you, please don't leave me. I'm going to die if you leave me, right? There's all these wonderful songs, right? Beautiful songs, but they're not talking about love. They're talking about craving, desire, attachment, right? If you can't go on without this person, and you're down on your knees begging this person not to leave your life, that's not your love that's causing that. That's the craving, desire, attachment. So it's for beings, and it could be any beings in any realm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no other questions. I don't see any online either. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is take a break for you guys. And when we come back, I'm going to teach this next topic of eliminating desire for form and formless. This is two of the fetters, number 6 and 7. I'm going to explain to you what it is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. But before we go to our break, let me just take a little poll like I usually do each morning. We have our excursion this afternoon. If you guys would like to go on the excursion, one second. It's Wat Tung Yu. If you guys would like to go to this is a recreation area. It's a reservoir. It's a nature area. It's a park that's run by the military, and there's a small entrance fee to go in. And then you usually get one of these little bungalows. So as a group, we would get one of these bungalows, and then we would order food, and then food would come to us, and we would sit and chat and talk. Maybe if you'd like to take a dip in the water, or if you'd like to take a nature walk. If you're really adventurous, they have a zip line, they have ATVs, they have, things like that. They have different things for you to explore. They have bicycles, they have massages, they have different things like this. So if you guys would like to go to this during our break, our free time from 12:30 to 6:30, we can go here. So what I do each day is I take a little check-in to see who would like to go on the excursion. So who would like to go on this? So 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. Just 3 people. Okay. So I won't order any transportation. I'll just drive myself. I have my car here. You guys can easily fit in my car. And we'll just go here and have a good time. Okay. All right. So right now is 8 minutes after 11. Let's just call it 11:10. We'll take a 20-minute break. When we come back at 11:30, I'll teach this next topic of a desire for form and desire for formless. And then we'll also get into conceit as well. I'm going to teach that fetter and helping you to understand how to eliminate that. All right. So enjoy your break. I'll see you at 11:30.